Up next, we have Solomon Khan, VP of Product and Analytics at Nielsen, where he leads the product team at Nielsen Sports and is responsible for the AI and machine learning systems that generate the world's most valuable sports sponsorship data set. He also leads a global team of analysts who generate actionable data and insights for the world's largest right holders and brands. He's here to share his experience on how Nielsen Sports transformed a key product offering by implementing AI and computer vision in order to solve the biggest challenges in sports sponsorships. Please take it away, Solomon.
Hey everybody, my name is Solomon Khan. I'm a VP of Product and Data at Nielsen, and I'm excited to talk to you today about leveraging data science for sports sponsorship valuation. Overall today, we'll cover three main topics. So first, I'll give you a little bit of background on Nielsen Sports so you have some context on the rest of the conversation. Next, I'll talk you through how we've been working to transform the business with data and technology. And then lastly, we'll spend most of the time on lessons learned and what you can take away from this that you can go back to your organization and can help you make an impact. So Nielsen Sports is a player in the sports sponsorship market. And so in this market, you've got brands and rights holders. The rights holders are traditionally teams, leagues, sports federations, et cetera. And they're working to help advertise the sponsor in the sports context. I'm sure all of you will have seen, jersey sponsorship, patch on an NBA jersey, LED boards at games that you can see on the television. All of those, that's a $60 billion market for sports sponsorship, and it's rapidly becoming more sophisticated. So a long time ago, it was very much, the CEO was a fan of this team or this league. And so therefore, that's why you as a company ended up getting into a sponsorship deal. Nowadays, the market is far more sophisticated and is really maturing quickly. There's a lot of data and analytics that goes into the decisions that you make around sponsorship in sports. And Nielsen is the largest global provider of data to support that sports sponsorship ecosystem. So we've got three main categories in the Nielsen Sports business, again, all highly data intensive. The first is media value. So this is our product in order to help brands and rights holders understand how much a brand would have needed to pay in the advertising market for sort of like a TV commercial in order to get the same value that they got from buying the exposure through that sports sponsorship. So if you had 20 seconds of exposure on television, how much in a game, how much would you have needed to pay in that same game to get 20 seconds of commercial time? Next is fan insights. So how do you as a brand or how do teams communicate who their fans are? What do they do? What do they watch? How strong is their fandom? What are they doing outside of when they're watching sports? So all of this is really important for a brand to understand when they're thinking about doing a deal with a rights holder, because you want to know, not just that you're, buying what would have cost you $5 million in commercial inventory. If you're Coca-Cola, you want to know, okay, these fans drink twice as much Coca-Cola as people in other places, or the general population. And then lastly, we have a research and consulting business, and that's where we offer essentially any question that can be answered using sponsorship data. We help brands and rights holders answer those questions on a custom basis. The challenge for this business, and a broader challenge for Nielsen, and what makes Nielsen a really interesting place to be as a data person and as a place to participate in digital transformation, is that for most of us in this room, data and technology are two sides of the same coin, right? The data revolution was really powered by a lot of the underlying enabling technologies. And that's what allowed people to make a bigger impact with data without building up the systems in the same way that they used to. And really you get a huge amount of acceleration from technology. But Nielsen has been a data business far, far longer than data and technology have been connected in that way. And so the opportunity for Nielsen in general and in Nielsen Sports is how do you push the limits for how you take data business and transform it into a modern version of what it needs to be for the future. So to give a little bit of context on sort of some of the specifics of what was happening, mostly manually, 4 or 5 years ago at Nielsen Sports. So this is just sort of a little bit of a deep dive into our media valuation product. So we've got 3 categories of work that happens. We've got exposure analysis. And what's happening there is we're essentially recording global sports and looking at every single second to understand what brands are on the screen and how prominent those brands are on the screen. So we have a methodology that equates the value to how much time you are and the prominence of your advertising. You can imagine that if a commercial costs $30,000 in a game, and 1 second of that would be worth $1,000 because a 30-second commercial, well, that's when you take over the full screen. So if you have a tiny corner that your brand shows up during a game, you would get a fraction of that value. If you had sort of a full screen TVGI takeover, you would get a lot closer to the full value for that, right? So we have a whole methodology that goes through and analyzes every single second of television to come up with sort of the value. We match that to rates and ratings broadcasts across the world. So the same game might be broadcast on 50 different channels globally. So how do we track that? How do we understand the exposure that sports teams and brands are getting across the world? More than ever, especially with the major sports, they're now global brands. It used to be that, the NBA was more focused on the US, but at this point, there are so many billions of fans of the NBA across the world that it's not just about the US anymore. And then lastly, we've got data delivery. So how do we take what used to be much more manual and turn it into modern front-end delivery systems? So we've done a lot on our digital transformation journey already. We've still got more to go, but we've done a lot of major pieces. So firstly, we replaced sort of a SIFT, direct image match algorithm for a deep learning system in our exposure analysis process. So now, as we're analyzing all of that television data, we're able to do a much better job in the sports context because direct image match works great when images are exactly the same, but you can imagine in sports, people are always moving around. There's always different camera angles. The direct match doesn't get you as much as it would in other contexts. And so changing that out for a more modern computer vision image recognition system was a huge job, but is really improving our speed and quality for clients. Next is we leveraged our AI systems in order to build a market-leading social media product. So, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, content is content, right? It's not just about television anymore. It's however people are engaging with sports. So we need to analyze that. We've built modern front-end tools. We built a new syndicated global research product. We developed automated report generation. There's sort of a lot of big things that we've done over the course of the last couple of years. And so now I want to go through some of the lessons that we've learned going through that process. A lot of the lessons that I'm going to share are about some of the challenges of launching data products, especially in a business that already has significant revenue that relies on them. And I think as everybody here knows from their own work, winning with data is sometimes messier in real life than in white papers and case studies because, a lot of the challenging parts get glossed over. But even with these challenges that we're going to outline, everything is overcomable. And I think what we've found in our business and what I found in previous businesses is that you get a huge impact when you successfully execute some of these projects, and it can really transform the trajectory of a business. And the impact that you are able to have as a data person, as someone driving digital transformation, really makes it worth it in the end when you get to see the impact of all of the work that you've done. So the first and most important lesson that I would share as you think about rolling out any machine learning or AI product with actual customers is to understand the impact of when things go wrong, because people can reason and understand when a person is doing something. They sort of can naturally intuit why certain things will happen or why certain mistakes will happen, right? If we have people that are manually tagging logos and they missed one, people can easily understand a person, oh, okay, people are fallible and they make mistakes, and they should have caught something, but they didn't, and we can fix it in the background. People don't understand as much when a computer system makes a mistake, because computer systems are supposed to be exact. They're supposed to be perfect. They're supposed to be computers. They're not supposed to have the same weaknesses as humans, right? And so I think we all know that a model that has, is doing 99% still has that 1%. And then the question is, how does that 1% manifest? And how do you, as a leader, get ahead of some of the implications of that? And sometimes that 1% is bad enough that you need to build some pretty sophisticated systems around it in order to ensure that you get to your goal. I mean, look at self-driving cars as an example, right? 5 years ago or 6 years ago, it was a given that we would have huge fleets of self-driving cars by now, given all of the advances in AI technology. And I think that what we found in the actual world is that, yes, we've got 95% of the way there, but actually that last 5%, because it's so bad what can happen in that 5%, we need to build really large systems around that 5% in order to support what we want to achieve, because you can't roll out with 95%. And in some cases in your business, you're going to be totally fine. You'll understand the failure modes, right? We have a product at Nielsen where we, predict who's going to win Olympic medals as part of our Grace Note Sports business. If we make the wrong prediction for medals, and it turns out that other people win that didn't get predicted, that's expected. Everybody expects that. That's the whole point of watching the game instead of having a computer predict it. And so it's sort of not that much of a problem. But in other cases where clients are really relying on you, you need to really understand what's going on and how things can go wrong. So the second lesson is that around proof of concepts. So I'll start by saying that everybody should be doing proof of concepts, and for any big system that you're going to do, you should do whatever you possibly can in order to understand how to build a proof of concept before you invest in a much larger system. That said, proof of concepts don't always scale, and what you'll find as you try to expand out from a proof of concept into a larger system is that you're continually finding various production corner cases that you need to dive into on the back end in order to better understand and better address. It's totally normal. It's just a part of the process. But I think it can sometimes take people by surprise that you had a POC and it looked really good, and then in production you've got all these issues. That's a part of the process, and you should bake that in to anything you're going to do from a rollout perspective. Which gets us into this next point. There's a great saying about software development that I love, which is first you build the first 90% of the system, and then you build the next 90% of the system. And it's sort of everybody who's built a software project before knows that last 10% can take much longer than anybody ever expected. Data, when you build a data product, you actually add an additional layer of complexity, because you've got that same uncertainty around timelines and when things are going to happen as you do with your standard software development process. And then when you get to the end, you've got this question of, okay, so how does the data look? And it can take an unbounded amount of time once you see the data to understand when you're actually going to be client ready. Again, some contexts, other use cases, it doesn't, but especially in the Nielsen sports business where, we're powering the global world of sponsorship and we've got a lot of revenue that relies on our data, we need to take a lot more effort to make sure that the data is going to be as good as it can be before it gets to clients. And so it's an important thing to communicate out from a timing perspective in general for the business, to understand that you've got the software development timeline, and then you've got the data analysis timeline. The next lesson is sort of in about some high stakes decisions that as you go through your digital transformation journey with data, you'll very likely encounter. It's rare that I've seen a big data project not have a rough patch where the future of that project becomes in question, and something goes wrong in the development process where you're not sure if what you thought was going to take 6 months is now going to take 6 years. You've got data coming in that seems totally off. You've got various different parts along the way that people start asking the question, so is this going to make it or is this not? Because in traditional software, you generally know you can build it, and once you build it, it's going to be there. But for data products, again, it's a probabilistic model. And so as you go through the process, there are always questions about, well, is this going to do what we need it to, or is it not? And these kind of situations are where you really get tested as a leader, because sometimes the right decision is to fold them, and sometimes the right decision is to hold them. I mean, sometimes we've faced projects where actually we looked at we did a proof of concept, we looked at the data coming in when we built things out, and it just wasn't ready. And we needed to take a different approach, because that approach, when we looked at what was happening, wasn't going to fit the needs of the business. And other times it looked like, oh, this project was not fulfilling what it was supposed to, but you as a leader have to know, actually, this is something that can be overcome. And once we overcome it, we'll be able to realize the impact that we thought this was going to have. And this is where you're really tested as a leader, and they're all highly visible and meaningful decisions. And it's an exciting time in any data project lifecycle, right? Where you're making those decisions, but they're going to come, and it's a high stakes decision, but you need to be ready for them. And to sort of wrap it up, what I wanted to leave you with in terms of lessons learned was really to have this as sort of a guiding principle. Because if you've got this relentless customer focus as a guiding principle, I think you're going to end up being in a good place. It's sort of cliche to say, I feel like, because it's been said so many times, but we all know it's very easy to build data products or to transform something that end up not having a real impact on the business. You look around and you see every single business has pockets of dysfunction in it. Some businesses have bigger pockets, some have smaller, and they're all different types of dysfunction, but every business is dysfunctional in different ways. And when you come in as a data person and you think, oh, look at how dysfunctional this piece of the business is, let's go and let's transform that, and it's going to be amazing. And you do it, and then it doesn't necessarily have an impact on the business. It makes that area less dysfunctional, but that didn't necessarily really improve the life of your clients or really, change the bottom line of your business. And so when you think about relentless customer focus, relentless focus on impact, it's really about how do you play forwards? How do you keep saying, so what, right? You've built this. So what's going to happen? So what's going to happen? And test those assumptions, because you think if you build it that they're going to come, but that they're not. You can't just build things and expect that people are going to use them. You've got to go out and do the validation. You might need the marketing support. You might need the operations tie-ins, right? You've got to really think about the whole picture in the journey, not just the software piece, because the software piece is challenging, and it might be the most challenging part. But if you miss all the other parts, the engine might be the most complicated part in the car, but you can't go if you don't have wheels. So you got to make sure that whatever you are building, you've got the rest of the organization behind you to support. And that's it. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time today, and open to questions.